Tonight, we are sharing with you Cookeville's very own The Leave. Not just one, but 5 people in with me tonight. It's not just my personalities this evening. Go ahead and introduce yourselves and say what you do in the band.
Shane, I'm the drummer.
Malcolm, I play keyboards.
Nathan, trombone.
Dave, bass.
Pongo, saxophone.
And well, how long have you guys been in Cookeville? I started to say you've been here for a while, but how long?
6 years, maybe?
We've been performing together since 2010 was when we formed. But I think we've all been around or from Cookeville for quite a long time.
We are Cookeville people.
Yeah, we're
Cookvillians.
Yeah,
sort of,
no doubt, as they
sort
say,
of the
Cookeville.
natives.
So did you guys start out making the music that you make now?
Oh, no.
No.
There's an interesting story.
We love interesting stories, and I'm looking forward to sharing that. Let me clarify what kind of music you do play now, if you would, Dave.
What kind of music is it there, Dave?
Well, why don't you field this one, Malcolm?
Well, we blend a pretty eclectic roster of music, I'd say. A blend of like jazz, rock, soul, maybe even reggae. Any song can attach itself to a lot of different genres.
Just depends on what fits into it for that particular song, what you've gotten together. So we'll talk about that type of music, exactly what it is. I don't think we're going to end up with a label when we're done because, as they said, they are all over the place. And we're going to get a chance to hear that a little bit later with some of their songs, too. As we talk tonight with The Leave on the 9 o'clock news local edition on Rock 93.7. A little bit soulful this evening as we mix quite a few different instruments to make up The Leave, and quite a few different members, too. It's the 9 o'clock news local edition on Rock 93.7. I have the various members in with. Introduce yourselves. Say who you are again and what you play in the band.
I'm Pongo, play saxophone.
I'm Dave, I play bass.
Nathan on trombone.
Malcolm, I play keyboards.
Shane, I play the drums.
With such a varied amount of instruments in the band, how did you decide what you wanted to bring into this when you were first forming up?
I think I just kind of started playing something, and then it just kind of all fell together. I don't know. We don't ever really think about it, but that's where I think a lot of the jazz element comes into what we do, because a lot of it's improvised. And
Starts out with drums and bass a lot.
Yeah, a lot of the earlier songs, Shane and I would kind of work out the format and the structure of everything, and then everything else just kind of
Fell into place where it needed to go.
Yeah.
And definitely everybody takes part in the songwriting process.
Not just with their own instrument either. I mean, there's a lot of times we hear stuff and, hey, play that again. That's really cool. Or what if you did it like this? I think it goes around all 5 of us.
You guys have been together as a band since I think we established earlier about 2010.
right.
So the last few years have been spent figuring out how to make everything fit together. As you said, you write for each other's instruments. So it sounds like that part comes together well. But how did the very beginning begin?
Well, I had just moved back to Cookeville from Los Angeles, and I knew all these guys from a couple of us went to high school together. We played in various bands. Shane and I were actually in a metal band together before I moved to Los Angeles. Nate and Pongo were in a ska band together called Dimples Malone with some other friends of ours, and we just kind of got together to start one thing, which
The very first practice was supposed to be a reggae band, and then it turned into a kind of not eating tuna.
it turned into the crazy mix of everything that it is now. It's a mix of punk and reggae and jazz and rock and.
Yeah, that's kind of what's neat about us. Is I know from my own personal experience playing with these guys, they played for about, a year before I showed up. And I was kind of reserved about it at first. It's like, how would all these guys work together? And I couldn't see a congruency in the styles of the different players in the band. But that's kind of become what I've grown to appreciate about it is the fact that everybody brings a really different vibe.
What's really funny about our group, I think, is if you look at pictures or look at us on stage or look at us in some place, you would never think we're in the same band. Especially even when we're on stage, you're looking at it and you're like, what is this? Just like, you got this guy that looks like this guy that's doing this thing, but sonically, it just comes together into something that is probably the proudest project.
It's about like
I've ever
looking
been
at
involved
George Clinton's Parliament Funkadelic from a distance. You're like, how does that all work?
I don't know if we're that wild.
Yeah,
Well,
You're not quite that wild,
You
maybe.
suggesting that we start wearing diapers on stage?
I got dibs on the wedding dress.
You might pull that off with the pirate hat. It might
Right.
go with that. Well, you guys are certainly a group of personalities, and the music that comes out of this, as you said, you might not have expected it when you first heard it. So how about if we share one of your tracks? Let's give a listen to Melancholia on Hawthorne. Where does that come from?
When I lived in Los Angeles, I lived in Hollywood between Sunset Boulevard and Hollywood Boulevard, and the street I actually lived on was Hawthorne.
living in Hollywood makes you sad. And there you go. That's how you get, no.
Sort of.
Well, that's where the inspiration part for that, the name of it, I guess, comes from as far as the instrumentation of it.
As far as the instrumentation, I think that's one of those things that just came out of a jam session.
Yeah, it was a drum and bass thing.
Yeah, we just playing and things just kind of fell together. And a lot of times, just what comes out immediately when we're jamming in our studio rehearsal space is what winds up being the final writing process.
This is Melancholia on Hawthorne. It's The Leave on the 9 o'clock news local edition on Rock 93.7. With influences that range from being in ska bands and metal bands to just being in a band together now. We're talking with The Leave tonight on the 9 o'clock news local edition here on Rock 93.7. The members of this band, together a few years now, been making music. How many songs have you crafted in your time together?
Somewhere around
That we've actually named. There's a lot of things that just randomly come out when we're at gigs, and when we first started playing gigs, we'd have a 4-hour time slot, but we'd only have about an hour's worth of music. We'd play for an hour our actual structured songs, and then the whole rest of the night was just jamming and
spontaneous,
improvising and making things up on the spot. And
a lot of things get written in those instances as well.
Yeah, very true.
Well, like Mal was saying, we played a year before he came on, or 9 months, whatever it was. So his first playing with us was at a gig. So everything about his original writing was spontaneous. It's typical of what we do.
So nobody sits around going, I'm going to write the masterpiece that I'll bring into these guys and just knock them over?
Well,
Dave kind of does
sit
that.
around and I write a lot of bass lines, and I'll kind of structure things out the way I want it to go, sort of. But I wait until I get in and see what everybody else has to contribute to it and what their feedback is on where it needs to go.
So most of these things come out of your live playing, jam sessions, or as you said, in your rehearsal space. I think you mentioned that earlier.
It's a good split. I'll actually take the time to write things, and then comes in, and then we just kind of work off of that, and it mutates into something completely different than what I originally may have thought it was going to be, but it's always 4,000 times better, I think.
Your jam sessions, as you put them earlier, kind of breathe life into what you're going to be making music-wise. So how long do you guys hang out on the stage? I think you said 4 hours?
It just kind of depends on
Yeah, it just depends on the gig. It could be 2 hours, 3 hours, probably never more than 4. Well, there's been a couple that's been more than 4.
I think we've done 8.
We have done the 8.
Yeah.
The 8? How did you end up with 8 hours on stage?
Just playing multiple gigs in one day.
The money kept coming in. So we kept playing.
Yeah, we've had that happen before. Would you play another hour? We'll pay you. Yeah, if you're paying us.
It's just I don't think we've ever had a problem like not having material. Like I said before, it's even when we only had 5 or 6 songs or 8 songs or whatever, and we'd go play a 4-hour show. Some of my favorite stuff that I listen back to on recordings from those is some of the things that we just came up with off the cuff. In like that 4th set when we didn't have any idea what we were going to do, the vibe was kicking and the vibe was there, and we're just doing our thing and doing what we do.
Sounds like a fond memory. What's your most outlandish memory of being on stage?
Do we really need to get into it?
I think I don't know what we want to get into with outlandish.
Yeah,
I have one. It was when we first started. We use effect pedals on our horns so we can get different sounds. And it was the first time we were done with our gig, and we were like messing around with all this stuff. And we like made the person that was in charge of the bar that night really mad. And she's like screaming at us and cussing at us.
Nate, get off the mic. It's enough.
It was awesome. It was like Darth Vader voice and a goat voice and a robot voice. Oh, we had a good time.
One neat thing about this particular ensemble and the kind of music that we play is it affords us the opportunity to play a lot of different kinds of gigs.
Yeah. With our arrangement, we can pull out jazz standards and play things like that, and then we can throw in some Led Zeppelin and some Beatles and some other things with our own spin on it. Because without a guitar player or vocalist, it's people don't expect you to just start busting out some Dazed and Confused or something. And
Don't need no dang guitar.
catches people off guard, and it usually is met with both thunderous applause and slight confusion.
Yeah, that's true.
We're going to continue our conversation with The Leave as we continue the 9 o'clock news local edition on Rock 93.7. Getting a little jazzy, a little bit different, and non-vocal tonight, too. It's The Leave, the 9 o'clock news local edition on Rock 93.7. They are our guest in studio, and yes, a little bit of a departure. They are one of the bands that we have on that no vocals. We didn't really talk about that earlier, Dave. We kind of just glossed over that fact that you do have a lot of instruments in the band, but you say you stay away from, well, don't stay away from. I guess that's not the right phrase, is it?
No, I don't think we've ever really been opposed to having a vocalist. It's just one of those things that, I don't know, it's I feel like with the music and listening to instrumental music, and I guess with growing up listening to a lot of jazz and a lot of, Frank Zappa and a lot of things where there's so many different interesting pieces going on, you kind of get your own visualization instead of having somebody telling you what you should be thinking or feeling or whatever. So it's left more to your personal interpretation.
So what you take away from something like one of your songs we talked about earlier, Melancholia, somebody else might see it in a different town, in a different setting.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that'll provoke, its own response in each and every person that listens to it. And one person, just the name by itself, and with naming some of these songs, and I don't want to take full credit for that, but I think I kind of took over on that. But since we don't have lyrics or whatever, I tried to make the titles of the songs kind of tell a little bit of a story in its own self. And I mean, we've got some songs that have a really long name, like The Arbitrary Conversation Between the Mountains and the Sea.
Number 2.
That was number. Yeah, it's
Number
number
2.
2. I'm getting them mixed up now.
First they were all numbers, and now we have actual titles to the song.
Well,
I think we went all the way up to 14.
Yeah, and then
we started naming them.
You start getting into 42C-Q34, and then you're just like, oh, we got to name these things. Serial numbers started running out.
Not having a vocalist is interesting too, because we don't necessarily have a front man. It makes us have to think of a different way to approach to entertain also. So like Dave says, sometimes you go to a show to see a guy and see his antics and whatnot, and like me, I'm a real geek when I go to a show. I want to see what equipment they're using, what kind of technique they're using, and all that. So I kind of feel like when people come and listen to us or watch us, they're looking to geek out a little bit or just relax. So, we were talking about how we can morph into any situation. We've heard a lot of times, man, my ears aren't bleeding tonight.
Yeah.
So the arrangement affords us that too.
Yeah, I think we always have a really good volume that when you come to our shows, you can enjoy the music, but you can still have a conversation with the person next to you without screaming. Also, something that with vocals is a lot of times I'll go out to see bands, or you go in someplace and there's a band playing, and the music's amazing, but the singer's off key, and they've got a whole look at me. I'm a singer. I'm slightly crazy, and that's my thing. I prefer to let the music speak for itself and let everybody have their own experience. They'll feel it and they can enjoy it, but it doesn't have to be in their face the whole time either.
It's not so obvious they left the auto-tune turned off that night.
Right.
Well, let's give a listen to one of your other tunes here. Down the Hill from Sunset. I'm guessing this is another one of those Time Out in Hollywood things.
Yeah, I actually wrote this at most of the bass line with a band I was in L.A. called Alive Again, and my guitar player and drummer lived in an apartment just down the hill from Sunset, which was where I wrote this in their living room.
So it's kind of like having a GPS tag in it with the title.
Yeah, sort of.
So you brought it back with you. You brought it to them, and they reworked any parts? Or
Oh, it's completely different. If I could find the recording of how we played it versus, because the only thing I pulled from it was my bass line, and then reworked how things were arranged, sort of how long parts went on for. And, it's just completely night and day. That's the other thing I like about it, too, is taking things that I may have performed with other people or different things and seeing what they're going to put onto it without ever telling them what's happening. It's like the telephone game of music. And I just never know. You never know what's going to happen. It might not ever be the same way twice.
It's Down the Hill from Sunset. It's The Leave on the 9 o'clock news local edition on Rock 93.7. We've been discussing the genesis, the time together of The Leave tonight and how they got to the point that they're at. It's the 9 o'clock news local edition on Rock 93.7. I want to thank you guys for coming in and giving us a chance to get to know a little bit more about what's in your band, other than just the instruments, which go ahead and say what you do again in the band, who you are.
Name's Shane. I play the skins.
Malcolm, I play the keyboard.
Nathan, trombone.
Dave, bass.
Pongo, saxophone.
And, of course, as we mentioned and touched on earlier, no vocalist for this. It's all instrumental stuff, and it's all online, too. You guys have a presence on there, ReverbNation.com. You can just put in for The Leave, and you're also on, Facebook. Where else?
Our actual website is funktheleave.com, FUNKTHELEAVE.com.
You can go there, and it has a listing for performances, too, where you guys are going to be out playing. Now, as we mentioned earlier, you're not going to be doing performances for a little bit till your drummer's back up and ready to go.
Right. We're taking a little bit of a hiatus.
But once that's clear, or he's clear, rather, you guys are going to be hitting and doing some performances. You normally play around Cookeville?
Yeah, we've played out of town a couple times, and that's definitely something that we're probably going to get into in the near future, is doing some long weekends.
Some festivals. We're trying to find, I think Franklin's got one, and
Yeah, festivals always seem to be a pretty good fit for us, and we have fun. So
Some of your songs are up online, as we mentioned, at your website, also on Reverb Nation. Do you have anything on YouTube performance-wise as far as...
I hear there's rumors of a performance from Solstice a couple of years ago that's on there, but I haven't been able to find it.
Was that the one when it was raining?
I think that's the one where we had the really awesome show where we're playing some Miles Davis in the rain.
We were cooking. It was awesome.
If you find the lost performance that's on YouTube, share it with them on their Facebook page so they know about it. I want to thank you guys for coming in and talking to us tonight.
All right.
That's The Leave on the 9 o'clock news local edition on Rock 93.7.